Nights together turned into a morning that altered their future. The morning light filtered through half-drawn curtains, illuminating two figures frozen in shock. Elena's pregnancy test trembled in her hand, the two pink lines unmistakable against the white plastic. Beside her, Marcus stared at it, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions, fear, wonder, panic, and something else neither of them could name yet. They'd spent countless nights together over the past year, but this particular morning would forever divide their lives into before and after. If you're enjoying this story so far, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more emotional journeys like this one. Your support means everything. Elena and Marcus had met at a mutual friend's wedding 13 months earlier. She was the maid of honor who'd organized everything down to the last detail. He was the best man who'd forgotten his speech and improvised brilliantly. Their connection had been immediate, a spark neither expected but both recognized instantly. "You're the most organized person I've ever met," Marcus had told her that night as they slow danced under string lights. Elena had laughed, her dark curls bouncing against her shoulders. "And you're the most charming disaster I've ever encountered." They lived in different cities, Elena in Boston managing a successful interior design firm, Marcus in New York writing for a prestigious magazine. Their relationship existed in weekend visits, late-night phone calls, and a growing collection of train tickets. Neither had planned for anything serious. Both had careers they'd spent years building. Love was supposed to be convenient, contained, controllable. But love rarely follows plans. 6 months into their relationship, during a snowstorm that had trapped them in Marcus's apartment for 3 days, they'd first whispered, "I love you," to each other. The confession had surprised them both, words that emerged without calculation or strategy, simply the truth that had grown between them. "I didn't mean to fall in love with you," Elena had admitted, tracing patterns on his chest as they lay tangled in his sheets. "I didn't mean to either," Marcus had replied, kissing her forehead. "But here we are." They discussed the future in abstract terms. Someday, maybe, they might live in the same city. Someday, perhaps, they might want the same things. But that someday had always seemed safely distant, a conversation for another time. Until this morning. Elena placed the pregnancy test on the bathroom counter and turned to face Marcus fully. At 34, she had built her company from nothing, working 16-hour days and sacrificing personal relationships for professional success. At 36, Marcus had finally secured his dream position as a feature writer after years of rejection and uncertainty. "Say something," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the bathroom fan. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I don't know what to say." The silence between them expanded, filled with unasked questions and unspoken fears. "We need to talk about this," Elena finally said, her practical nature asserting itself even as her heart raced. "But not here. Not like this." They moved to Marcus's small living room, the morning sun now fully illuminating the space. Books were stacked on every surface, Marcus's personal library that he'd cultivated since college. Elena had always loved this about him, his hunger for stories and knowledge. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked, sitting beside her on the couch but leaving space between them. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. His dark hair was rumpled from sleep, his eyes, those kind brown eyes that had first drawn her in, were wide with uncertainty. She'd fallen in love with his gentleness, his creativity, the way he saw beauty in ordinary moments. But was love enough for what lay ahead? "I don't know," she answered honestly. "This wasn't in my 5-year plan." A small smile flickered across his face. "You and your plans. They've gotten me this far," she replied, but without her usual conviction. The truth was, Elena had always imagined herself as a mother someday. She'd simply pushed that desire into some nebulous future where it wouldn't interfere with her career ambitions. Now, that future had arrived unexpectedly, demanding immediate attention. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you want?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as his thinking pose. I never really thought about being a father. My own dad was, well, you know. She did know. Marcus's father had abandoned the family when Marcus was 7, leaving his mother to raise 3 children alone. The wound of that desertion still shaped him in ways he was only beginning to understand. But, he continued, his voice growing stronger, I know I love you. And I know I don't want to lose what we have. Elena felt tears forming. We live in different cities, Marcus. We both have careers we've worked so hard for. A baby would change everything. Everything's already changed, he said softly. The question is what we do now. The following weeks were a blur of doctor's appointments, late-night conversations, and difficult decisions. Elena confirmed the pregnancy with her doctor, 8 weeks along, healthy so far. She told her business partner, Sophia, who responded with unexpected support. You built this company, Sophia had reminded her. You can figure out how to be a CEO and a mother if that's what you want. Marcus spoke with his editor, negotiating the possibility of more remote work. He researched Boston's literary scene, exploring potential opportunities there. They were trying, both of them, but the strain was evident. Their phone calls, once filled with laughter and stories from their days, now centered around practical concerns and unresolved questions. The distance between them seemed to grow despite their efforts to bridge it. 3 months into the pregnancy, Elena traveled to New York for what had become their monthly weekend together. The autumn air was crisp, leaves turning brilliant shades of red and gold in Central Park. They walked together, hands intertwined but minds elsewhere. I've been offered a promotion, Elena said suddenly, stopping near the lake. Creative director for the entire East Coast division. Marcus's hand tightened around hers. That's amazing. Congratulations. It would mean more travel, more responsibility. She didn't meet his eyes. I'd have to postpone my maternity leave. I see. His voice was carefully neutral. I haven't accepted yet, she added quickly. I wanted to talk to you first. Marcus looked out across the water, where a family was feeding ducks, mother, father, and a small child bundled in a red coat. What do you want me to say, Elena? That you should turn down the opportunity you've worked your entire career for? Or that I'm fine with you being even busier when the baby comes? The tension that had been building between them finally erupted. That's not fair, Elena said, pulling her hand away. I'm trying to figure this out just like you are. Are you? Because it seems like you're making decisions based on your career, not our family. The word hung between them, family. They hadn't used it before, not in reference to themselves. We're not a family yet, Elena said, immediately regretting the words as hurt flashed across Marcus's face. If that's how you feel, then maybe we need to reconsider everything. He turned away, shoulders rigid with pain. Elena reached for him, but he stepped back. Marcus, please. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? His voice was quiet now, which somehow hurt more than if he'd shouted. Because I've been rearranging my entire life to make this work. I've been looking at jobs in Boston, talking to my editor about remote options. I've been researching daycares and pediatricians. What have you been doing besides working 60-hour weeks and pretending nothing has to change? The accusation stung because there was truth in it. Elena had been compartmentalizing, treating the pregnancy as a separate issue from her career rather than acknowledging how completely intertwined they would become. I'm scared, she admitted, the words catching in her throat. I'm terrified of failing at this, of failing you, failing our child, failing myself. Work is the one thing I know I'm good at. Marcus's expression softened. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. Elena, you excel at everything you commit to. But you have to actually commit. They spent the rest of the weekend talking, really talking, about their fears and hopes. Marcus confessed his terror of repeating his father's mistakes. Elena shared her worry that motherhood would erase the identity she'd worked so hard to build. They discussed practical solutions. Marcus could write from anywhere, Boston had excellent schools, Elena's company had offices in multiple cities that she could potentially transfer between. By Sunday evening, they had a tentative plan. Marcus would move to Boston after the baby was born. Elena would take the promotion but negotiate for reduced travel and flexible hours. They would find an apartment with enough space for a nursery and a home office. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The pregnancy progressed. Elena's body changed, her sleek business attire replaced by maternity wear that she insisted on keeping as professional as possible. Marcus visited more frequently, sometimes staying for a week at a time, working remotely from her apartment. They attended birthing classes together, laughing at their awkwardness during the breathing exercises. But challenges remained. Elena's promotion came with unexpected demands. A major client insisted on working directly with her, requiring trips to Chicago that left her exhausted. Marcus received an offer to write a feature series that would take him through Europe for 6 weeks, an opportunity too significant to decline, but with terrible timing. Go, Elena had insisted when he'd shown her the email. The baby isn't due for another 3 months. You'll be back in plenty of time. Are you sure? Marcus had asked, searching her face for any sign of hesitation. I'm sure, she'd said, meaning it. This is important for your career. We agreed we'd support each other's work. So Marcus went to Europe, and Elena threw herself into preparing for both the baby and a major client presentation. They spoke daily, sharing updates and small moments from their separate lives. Marcus sent photos of ancient architecture and quaint cafes. Elena sent ultrasound images and pictures of the nursery she was slowly assembling. It should have worked. They were both trying so hard to make it work. But then Elena's doctor noticed her blood pressure rising dangerously during a routine checkup. Preeclampsia, he explained, a condition that could threaten both her and the baby if not carefully monitored. He recommended immediate bed rest. For how long? Elena had asked, thinking of her upcoming presentation, the client who was counting on her. Until delivery, the doctor had replied firmly. Which, given your condition, might be sooner than your due date. Elena called Marcus immediately, the time difference meaning she woke him at 3 a.m. in Barcelona. I'm coming home, he said without hesitation after she explained. You don't have to, she protested weakly. You still have 2 weeks left on your assignment. Elena, his voice was gentle but firm, nothing is more important than you and our baby. Nothing. He was on a flight the next day, leaving his editor to reassign the remaining interviews. When he arrived at Elena's apartment, exhausted from 20 hours of travel but determined, she felt something shift inside her. This was what commitment looked like, not perfect plans or promises, but showing up when it mattered most. The following weeks were a lesson in adaptation. Marcus set up a workspace in Elena's living room, finishing his European articles while she directed her team remotely from bed. Her colleagues stepped up remarkably, Sophia taking over the Chicago client with skill that made Elena realize she'd been unnecessarily controlling. You've built something that can function without you micromanaging every detail, Marcus observed one evening as they reviewed emails together. That's the mark of a great leader. Elena smiled, placing his hand on her rounded belly where their daughter was kicking vigorously. I'm learning to delegate. The baby arrived 3 weeks early, a dramatic water-breaking moment during a video conference that would later become a favorite story at family gatherings. The labor was difficult, complicated by Elena's preeclampsia, but Marcus never left her side. For 18 hours, he held her hand, wiped her brow, advocated for her with medical staff, and reminded her of her own strength when she felt she had none left. When Sophia Grace Williams finally entered the world at 4:37 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, both Elena and Marcus wept. She was tiny but perfect, with Elena's dark curls and Marcus's thoughtful eyes. She's beautiful, Marcus whispered, cradling his daughter with a tenderness that made Elena's heart expand. Like her mother. Elena watched them together, this man she loved holding the life they'd created, and knew with absolute certainty that all their struggles and compromises had been worth it. "I want to marry you," she said, the words emerging without planning or calculation, simply the truth that had grown inside her alongside their child. Marcus looked up, surprise and joy illuminating his tired face. "I was going to ask you, once things settled down." "I beat you to it," Elena smiled, reaching for his hand. "So? What's your answer?" "Yes," he said simply. 1,000 times yes. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Boston Public Garden, baby Sophia dressed in a tiny lace dress that matched her mother's. Elena's company had opened a New York office, allowing her to split her time between cities. Marcus had secured a position as a contributing editor that permitted him to work primarily from home, with occasional trips to the New York office. Their life together wasn't perfect. They still argued about schedules and priorities. Elena sometimes worked too late, Marcus occasionally missed deadlines when absorbed in childcare. They navigated the complex choreography of 2 careers and 1 small, demanding human with varying degrees of grace. But on Sophia's first birthday, as they watched their daughter smash cake into her face with delighted abandon, Elena leaned against Marcus's shoulder and whispered, "We're doing okay, aren't we?" He kissed the top of her head, his arm tightening around her waist. "Better than okay. We're writing our own story." And they were, a story that had begun with nights together and a morning that altered their future, but continued with thousands of ordinary days made extraordinary by the family they'd built together, one compromise, one challenge, one triumph at a time. As the years passed, Elena and Marcus would face many more crossroads, career opportunities that required difficult choices, parenting decisions that tested their unity, moments of doubt and exhaustion that made them question their path. But they faced each one together, remembering that morning with the pregnancy test and all they'd learned since, that love isn't about perfect circumstances but about choosing each other every day, especially on the hardest days. Their story wasn't about having it all figured out from the beginning. It was about figuring it out together, step by step, night by night, and morning by morning. Thank you for joining Elena and Marcus on their journey. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the beautiful complexity of love, family, and the unexpected turns that shape our lives. Until next time, remember that sometimes the mornings that seem to disrupt our carefully laid plans are actually the beginnings of our greatest adventures.